Hello friends, today we'll be talking about what it means to be in the eclipse season. And before reviewing the eclipses themselves, I want us to understand what this pre-eclipse and then being in that stretch in between and after the eclipse means, why they feel different than ordinary times. And that's because the eclipses just they're not defined just by those two dates when they're occurring. It's talking about a stretch of time. It takes us several weeks for the unfolding of them, and the result of them can actually take months, but the stirring of the pot, the stirring of the universe, it's not just concentrated to those two dates. So eclipse season roughly starts 10 days before the first one, then we have that stretch of time in between, and then 10 days after. And this period of time tends to feel very different for a lot of people. And we feel this because it's consciousness and the mind entering a different mode of processing reality. In some ways, experience stops moving sequentially through time. Like I did this, therefore now I feel this. You'll notice your mind is being drawn back to certain things. You're projecting into the future. The ground of the now, it's becoming unstable. And for a lot of people during this time, emotions intensify. And it almost feels like awareness is getting heightened, but the ground that we stand on, it's starting to dissolve. And there's just this general feeling of overwhelm. Things that we just can't put our finger on it. And we have to remember these feelings are coming from Rahu North Node and South Node Ketu. Rahu amplifies, South Node intensifies. Rahu has to do about the future, Ketu has to do about the past, where they're actually being pulled apart, creating a vacuum in the middle where we're finding ourselves right now. And this particular eclipse season feels a little bit more odd than the usual, and that's because we're having an out of sign eclipse. So for the first time now, Aquarius is being activated, while North Node Rahu is still in the sign of Pisces. And this detail matters because the nodes are introducing a discontinuity of time, action, consequence, result. It's like our bodies are still in the sign of Pisces, but our attention is now being drawn to that part of our chart where the sign of Aquarius is sitting. Because there are certain things that want to develop in that sector of the chart, in that part of our lives. So our attention's being drawn on it while our body is still somewhere else. So all of this just augments psychological pressure for us. So in this video, we're going to examine what are the eclipses doing on an existential level and how that's actually echoing through our psychology, through our bodies, thinking process, emotions, and in general, why are we feeling the way that we're feeling? I was at the gym today and I was just keep imagining based on the way I feel, that scene from Interstellar where he has basically transcended space-time. Now he's in that mechanism behind time where he can see the entirety of time. He's looking at his daughter in another time, but the daughter is just sensing things. While he can see past, present, future, she's sensing something from the future being conveyed to her in the now. This is what this kind of moment feels like. It's odd. And before getting into the depth of this video, I will be making explicit videos about the two eclipses. There will be an article about this video on the website. So if you want to catch those videos and the upcoming articles as well, please remember to subscribe so YouTube sends you a notification. And I will link another video if you guys want to understand what Rahu and Ketu mean, how they function and operate, what they're saying about the nature of existence and how we experience it. There's another video. I'll put the link in the description box below. Now, let's get into the depth of this video and let's talk about the function of the eclipses and why they're doing what they're doing. So eclipses happen when the sun, moon, and the nodes come within 18 degrees of each other, we get an eclipse. And the closer that the sun and the moon are to the nodes, we start to have total lunar eclipse, total solar eclipse. The further away that they are, we get partial ones. But 18 degrees is the marker that qualifies it as an eclipse. And when they come within that 18 degrees of the nodes, when we're coming to a new moon or a full moon, what we're getting is an interruption of light from both of the luminaries, because the sun is the morning light, the daytime light, and the moon is the nighttime light. So symbolically, this is saying something about the interruption of reality and how we can experience it through our consciousness and through our mind. And if you think about it, the sun represents consciousness and the moon represents the mind. And when we take the sun into consideration, the sun, its light, also represents seeing and vision. It's saying something about the way that we have conscious experience. And based on that awareness, we're able to orient ourselves in our lives. It's also symbolizing the way that we experience our sense of continuity because the sun represents the self. So it's the organizing principle of what it means to exist. The moon, on the other hand, represents our internal regulation, our interiority, our inner landscape, and its key symbol is the mind. So it's about our emotional rhythm, our memories, habits, instinctual responses, just the way that without thought, our bodies just respond to something. And the moon does represent the body too. And if you think about it, the nodes themselves are representing an evolutionary trajectory of existence, of reality, and its existing entities. Ketu's telling you where you come from, what you're made of. Rahu is saying that's the horizon of your being, that's where you can go. So from a psychological perspective, Rahu, for example, is showing where experience wants to be pulled forward towards. And that goes irrespective of our actual situations, desires, and circumstances. And I'm focusing on Rahu North Node right now because we're having a solar eclipse that's close to Rahu North Node. And you can think of Rahu North Node as the violent river of Fortuna. We don't control this river. It's just going to take us somewhere. And the best that we can do is hope that we arrive to the destination at the end of this river in one piece, in a better place. This is why the nodes are representing sudden beginnings and endings. So when we get these three factors, the luminaries and the nodes converging, which we call an eclipse, there is generally disruption to our orientation and how we regulate ourselves and our lives. It has its own strong momentum, current that pulls us. And this is what we're sensing during the eclipse season. Like we'll see that perception is intensifying. Time can feel a little bit denser, as if it's containing more than it should, but we don't necessarily have access to all the information there. And if you think about it, this goes completely against the psyche's natural default mode because we like to process reality sequentially based on cause and effect. The mind likes to be linear. That's its design. But during the eclipses, this is not what's happening. And this is one of the reasons why the eclipse season generally has a feeling of overwhelm. We temporarily feel destabilized. And as I mentioned earlier, this destabilizing feeling begins days before the eclipse. And since we're in that period right now, I want you to take a stock of the way you feel. We're having thoughts and emotions that are difficult to name at this moment. Like the best I could personally do was to connect it to a movie scene. Like thoughts can feel unsettling. Let's say memories from the past start to pour in for no reason. You were not thinking about that event, that day, that person. It's been years. And somehow it's coming back. Like the things that we thought we had left behind us, they're just coming up to the forefront of the mind. Emotions can surface without a clear cause. For some of us, we're noticing that our attention just drifts. And then for other people, their attention gets fixated onto one thing while they have a million things to do. And if you think about it, this is the psyche, the antenna of the being picking up on the changes that are on the horizon. Even though those changes are not visible or tangible yet, we're responding to it already. This is us trying to orient ourselves, but not yet knowing what that is. And if you think about it, this is because our human consciousness has evolved to detect discontinuity in our environment. And right now, we're feeling that our sense of continuity is being meddled with. It's weakening. And what always comes into place for that pattern recognition machine that we have is our intuition is coming online. And with it, heightened emotions and thoughts. And we've got to remember where the North Node is in the sign of Pisces. It has a lot to do with intuition and subconscious material. And it's coming up to the surface much faster than we have the ability to integrate it and to make sense of it. So this is creating a lot of anticipation without having an objective. So this is experienced as a sense of uneasiness, restlessness, or feeling slightly unmoored or unhinged. It feels like we're losing our footing internally, even though external world and external life is marching on the way that it always does. And again, because it's an out of sign eclipse, the intuitive disturbances And the sequence of how things are coming up feels especially odd. It's like our mind is looking for a familiar interpretive framework. And yet, whatever we come up with, it just cannot stabilize this internal perception and sense that we have. And we're going to have this uneasy feeling, the unresolved tension going into the first eclipse. And let's just take a minute to talk about that first eclipse. I'm going to get into the depth of what it means in terms of what it's trying to unfold and what it's symbolizing in the next video. But I just want to touch on it in this one. The first thing I want to say that this 28-degree mark of Aquarius with the eclipse there, it's interrupting how we're moving towards the future. And I say the future again because we're talking about the head of the dragon, Rahu North Node, being involved here. Rahu North Node is always about outward and forward movement. And if you think about it, the sign of Aquarius is governing that part of our psyche that organizes meaning through ideas. It's an air sign. It's very cerebral. It thinks about systems. It's concerned with that. And it has a long-range vision. So it's not focused on an individual. It's looking at the totality of the picture, and that's why they say it's related to the collectives. So in some ways, this is telling us something about this eclipse being related to how our identity is tied to ideological beliefs about what is required for our progress, as well as to our sense of belonging, like to a tribe, to a group. And when we talk about the eclipses, when we talk about the nodes, they don't want to revise things. It's about complete disruption of the previous framework. That's what Rahu wants. It wants to cut the continuity of them because of the way they're connected and attached to certain things. For instance, internally, we can have these flashes of, I just need to cut myself from that belief, that way of being. Why have I been like that kind of a person? Why am I connected to those people? It's like a sudden loss of conviction. And we got to remember that interaction of Pisces, which is very believing, and Aquarius, which is actually very disbelieving. It's Saturn sign. It's a skeptic. It can be pessimistic at its worst. So ideas that once felt reliable are starting to lose their momentum. This is what all this undertone, the underfeeling of things are about. Like right now, the plans that we made for ourselves for our future feel pretty abstract. And look at, again, the sign of Aquarius, which house is it sitting in? It's talking about those themes, people pertaining to that house. Like there was once upon a time, this future that we used to imagine, and it just felt so inevitable to us, like it's my destiny. I'm supposed to get there and be that person and be there. Right now, it's starting to lose its gravitational pull. It's kind of like foreshadowing what's coming up, especially since it's out of sign eclipse. In some ways, this eclipse, because it's the first one of a series of eclipses that's going to happen in this axis of Aquarius and Leo, this one is just about disruption of things. So it's interruption without immediate replacement, but it's delivering the message undeniably. So here, meaning can dissolve faster than another kind of a coherence can come into its place. This is creating a feeling of disjuncture, feeling disjointed, not connected the way that we used to feel connected to the theme of that house. In many ways, Rahu wants to break our previous orientation towards certain things. And that's because it wants to make new orientations a possibility. And if you think about it, our psyche hates the state the most. We rather know the worst news, but just tell me the news. Don't linger, don't leave me in a limbo state. But we're in that limbo state. So there's this heightened awareness, sense of alertness that something's got to change, but we don't know what or how yet. So this shifts our energy abruptly too. That's why I was saying earlier, we can feel unhinged. And that's because the structures, the ideas that we used to rely on are being disrupted. So this is our consciousness. This is our sense of self, because the sun, solar eclipse, is being disrupted. And this is the state of mind. And with whatever that occurs because of the eclipses is going to take us into that in-between space till we have that lunar eclipse. So let's just talk about this in-between period between the two eclipses. One thing that all eclipses will have in common during this period, we don't have a stable reference point. It's like having 1 foot here, 1 foot there, and at the same time here, there, and then nowhere. And as I already mentioned, the first eclipse brings a sense of disruption to our sense of self. Our orientation gets disrupted. And that's either by real changes in our lives or we're just psychologically starting to understand some things very explicitly. And of course, the second eclipse hasn't revealed what it needs to for us to understand how to integrate this. So the psyche here is operating for about 2 weeks without its usual framework. And during this 2 weeks, usually decision making becomes more difficult. And that's because knowing the criteria for what we want to do stays unclear because we're getting disclosure of how things ought to be with that Aquarius thing that's happening. And yet we don't have a clear picture and we're still attached to the past. So it's like, what do I do? And because of this creates pressure, psychological pressure. And wherever the mind goes, the body follows. So the mind's becoming tired. So the body starts to feel a sense of fatigue. This is very common for that in-between space. And that's because the nervous system is just on high alert. But of course, the mind is not passive. It's always working. It's always trying to restore some sort of equilibrium, go back to what it knows, have a sense of predictability. So this is very common for people to start searching for explanations. Now, if your mind gravitates towards spiritual things, that's where your mind goes. If you're all about doom and gloom, that's where your mind will go. If you're more of a hopeful disposition, you try to be optimistic about what the future holds because the better you is always in the future. Nonetheless, the mind's just trying to problem solve. But with this particular eclipse, we're not going to understand how we're supposed to orient ourselves till we have that second eclipse. And if you think about it, that second eclipse has a lot to do with the way that we regulate ourselves because South Node Ketu is in the sign of Virgo. And Virgo is deeply connected to how we regulate life. It's about health, daily functioning, planning. How do we proceed? Problem solve, basically. But before we get there, this 2 weeks, don't be surprised if you feel tired. Give yourself some grace. Let yourself be okay with not knowing. If you have the luxury, let yourself be okay with not doing. Because you don't know what you're pushing forward towards. So that in itself can create more burnout. Like one of the things that burns us out in life is not knowing where the end point is. So we just keep moving and we can't pace ourselves. That's what I'm saying. When you have moments where you can just rest, take care of yourself, let the mind be, accept that these are the feelings of the moment, but they're not going to last for a lifetime. Like I said earlier, the body always follows the mind. So if you want to exhaust this body is going to get exhausted too. If you give your mind some grace, your body is going to feel the same thing. But let's just jump into the lunar eclipse since I just brought up Virgo. So the total lunar eclipse is going to be on March 3rd at 12 degrees of Virgo. So we have the moon conjunct South Node Ketu. And in general, lunar eclipses highlight our internal awareness. It intensifies it. We become more aware of our emotional and body signals. And again, Virgo is symbolizing how we manage life. Like daily life and in a very embodied kind of way. It's about how we can recognize and organize our routines, habits, systems of care, and all of it to keep the mind and the body and life functional. So a total lunar eclipse here is bringing a disruption to those systems of care and problem solving. And it's fair because think about it. On the other side of the axis with that solar eclipse, there's something in the universe that's trying to pull us somewhere else away from where we are. And whatever that we have in place right now, those systems are meant for the past, to this moment, to make that functional. We've been problem solving for that. But that has to come to an end or at least revise in some way so it can accommodate what's coming up in the future. And for a lot of us, the way that this is going to translate, for some, it will be explicit life events. But look back at how many eclipses you've experienced in your life. Like if you're 25 years old, you have already experienced about 100 eclipses roughly. And you didn't have something dramatic happen at every single one of them. But if you look back at the patterns of that eclipse cycle, when they were happening in that axis, you were being jolted, till by the end of it, your trajectory had changed. So this one for some people is just another nudge in that trajectory change. But for some people, let's say you have planets there as a sensitive point of your chart, is indicating a dramatic change. But the point that I'm trying to make here right now, we're going to feel the pressure of this disjointedness between where life's trying to go and how it is that we actually manage everyday life. And that too, it's going to show itself through more fatigue, certain kind of sensitivities coming up that we didn't necessarily have before. We're getting a somatic feedback this time. It's very body oriented and it's because of the moon. But if you think about it, it's because of all the stuff that's been happening up here. So the body becomes a site where the imbalance, where the difference between what's coming and what we need to do is showing itself through the body. This eclipse is giving us a hint, and for some of us coming on forcefully, showing us the cost of misalignments. Like if you don't align, what the cost of it will be in the long run. We're getting a taste of it. For instance, certain habits at this time are going to reveal their consequences. The ways that we're going to be overextending ourselves is also going to be undeniable. We're going to see that we have this need now, and we can't deny it anymore, that certain things or routines and how we conduct ourselves has to change. And it's happening under pressure. And it's fine. Honestly, we human beings usually don't create any kind of change until we are put into some sort of a pressure cooker. You can think of this as you getting a kind of a revelation, but through pressure. And before going to the last section of this video, I want to talk about the psychological function of fear during the eclipses. And I'm bringing this up because during all the years of practice that I've had in astrology, the clients that I've seen, one of the common state of mind that is always being expressed during the season is a sense of fear. So fear, dread, a sense of uneasiness is often interpreted as something is wrong or something is going to go wrong. But in reality, if you think back at all the eclipses, it was just a signal saying that the old orientations being lost, non-applicable. This is fear arising in the psyche, where it's detecting movements, but without a map, without understanding how it's supposed to move and where it's supposed to go. This is an evolutionary response to discontinuity. It's normal. It's natural. And if you think about it, every time continuity breaks in our life, fear comes online. But why is it coming online? Because it's trying to mobilize our attention to what matters. And during eclipse seasons, fear intensifies because orientation is genuinely unstable. This is a psyche saying, I don't actually trust my old predictive models. I have to problem solve. So the lesson here is not to figure out a way not to have fear, because this is just what the mind does, but to change our relationship to fear, especially during this time. Look at fear as a way of becoming self-contained. And what I mean by that is stop reaching out for interpretations that there's some energy force and there's this person and there's this thing. Like, just what I mean by self-containment, just let it be what it is. It's an uncomfortable moment. Let it be uncomfortable. Stop fearing the fear. That's what causes anxiety. Fear in its purest form, if we don't let it become our anxiety, it becomes one of the greatest problem solvers, because our instinct is to get ourselves out of that mode and out of that situation that might be harmful. And in reality, I want you to think about this. If we take the eclipses as something serious, if we're saying that these symbolic notations have an actual life manifestations, and if the nodes are representing something so powerful that now transcends our will, what is it that you can do? Nothing, really. That's what I mean about being self-contained. A lot of times that means having a sense of acceptance that in this moment we don't have control, but we do have the ability to actually sit with this moment. That kind of a situation, you can't force decisions. You can't have rigid beliefs, nor can you let your mind wander to anything and everything. Like premature conclusions, decision-making, all of it actually increases the trepidation that can exist during this time. The best thing that we can do is to just ground the psyche, and that comes through acceptance. That I do not have control over this moment, but I am a willing participant in this life to move with the flow of that river. I will not swim against it. And we know if there's like a strong, violent river, you do not want to swim against it. Effective responses for this period can include such things as reducing speculation, reducing unnecessary stimulation, Every time you go on vent to someone, for example, I don't just mean caffeine. When you go and talk about your stress to other people, if that person is not a professional who can contain and direct your stress, all you're doing is adding to your stress. Sometimes just being silent and quiet is the remedy and the cure. Preserve your physical rhythms. We take it for granted that we can move through the pathways of our days because we have certain rituals, practices, and routines. Even though you might feel tired, walk yourself to walk through those familiar routines and pathways. That's a form of staying grounded in life. Postpone commitments as a band-aid for discomfort. Like you might feel like, oh my God, I'm crawling out of my skin. I can't be at home alone. I just gotta go. But just be mindful of where you're going because you're gonna come back to that house again and you're gonna have to be inside of yourself again. And if you went to a place that wasn't accommodating to you, you're gonna feel 100 times worse than where you started. And I would say, lastly, one of the greatest things that we can do is to learn how to observe ourselves. This sounds cliche for some people, and then it sounds weird to others. But this is a shift from saying, I am angry to I feel angry. I am sad to I feel sad. And then watch that emotion. Watch that thought. Don't have an opinion about it. Don't try to solve it. Just be there with it like it's a friend in distress. It has so much to say to you. And right now, we're supposed to pick up this message. We're supposed to have this revelation because where we're going and what we're doing doesn't match. So we have to understand how they correspond. And the way to do that, even after these eclipses, is to be able to observe the discrepancies. And a lot of times that means just being in our own silence, listening. And I'm mentioning these responses because these are the things that doesn't allow the nervous system to just get hijacked. We're supposed to support our nervous system right now. And Aquarius is an air sign. And at this time, we already have Neptune in the fire sign, Saturn there. So things are a little jolty anyway. And you know, there's another thing that we have to learn in this life, which is a sense of humility in relation to life. And one of the definitions for life is that it always changes. We need humility in the face of changes. A lot of the stress is coming from the fact that we don't want things to change because we might not like the change. But that's the nature of life. And we have to show humility, which is another word for it is acceptance. Accepting it, that it's things are going to change. And we're going to go out as a willing participant. And it's also reminding us, like a bigger lesson here, control in life is always conditional and never an absolute. That means we don't have control over everything. That's an illusion. Times like the eclipses are actually teaching us those bigger lessons that should be carried forward to every aspect of life. And I know these aren't comfortable ways of being, but if we understand how to be in such a moment, we're stabilizing ourselves in a much deeper way in life in general. Like, think about it. If you are 50, for example, you have gone through this mode of being 200 times. And even if nothing happened in the past 200 times, but you have these senses and these feelings, there's something to be learned here. The only kind of control that we really do have is how we regulate this internal self, the being that we are within. And when we can do that, we don't get sucked into all kinds of different worlds that just drain us. Now, I want to talk about the post-eclipse period very briefly. And specifically with this one, is things are not going to get resolved cleanly and clearly. Like, all of these internal shifts are meant to translate eventually into external conditions, especially because of that out of sign thing that's happening right now. New patterns are supposed to emerge, new ways of engagement. So this feeling of I don't necessarily feel settled, again, it's fine. It's supposed to be this way until we get to the axis of these eclipses, which is in Aquarius, Leo. But the stage has been set now. So clarity is going to come gradually, but not as certainty. Rather, as a change in direction, the momentum starts to shift. And you know, people always talk about the eclipses like this 10 days before, the in between space, and 10 days after. But eclipses actually in reality take months to unfold. That's what I was saying. They nudge, and then you look back and your trajectory has changed. So keep all of that in mind. And before closing this video, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Comment, let me know how you're feeling this eclipse season. What do you think or what do you feel is getting stirred inside of you in your life? I'd love to hear from you. Leave your comments, and then there's 2 more videos coming out, and we'll continue our dialogue throughout those videos. And if you want a reading of these eclipses or other transits coming up in your charts, or to just understand your natal chart, the blueprint that's been designated to you, you can go to the description box below. My email's there, or you can go to parisayazdi.com for more information. Oh, and one more thing, the articles on the website, if you guys are interested to go into the depth of it or have a more reflective mode, because listening is often more passive than reading. And now to close, I just want you to remember the eclipse season actually reveals to us how fragile our orientation in life is. Like, life can change at a drop of a dime. Things can hijack our mind, our thoughts, our bodies in an instant. But at the same time, I want you to remember how adaptive consciousness, mind, and body they actually are. They respond very quickly. So we need to have a sense of self-trust. No matter what changes, we are endowed with that gift to be adaptive and to move in a different way. So we'll be fine. And eclipse seasons always promise some sort of a change. So uncertainty is part and parcel with it. But that is the condition for our growth. And I want you to remember the first eclipse is breaking some old continuity from something established, something that we thought we're going to go that way. And now life is revealing that, hey, there is another way. That's where you're actually going to go. And the purpose of this video was just to let you know what you're feeling is normal. It's okay. It's part of the process for this period. And I want you to know this. Evolution has never been a walk in a park. Not for the universe, not for this planet Earth, not for all of its creatures, and that includes us human beings. But it's been the only way to move forward. So embrace the change that's on the horizon, and just remember, keep in mind, change is never easy, but it's necessary. And that's it for today. Sending you much love. Till next time.